Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Event Space. You're tuned into the live mentorship series with Chris Orwig, hosted by Sony. And today, a special guest, Jessica Patterson, joining us as well. Jessica, I didn't cut the mustard last time. I was on, and Chris is like, "No, we got to do better. Who can we bring that's gonna totally eclipse you? Make
I'll
this
cut the
mentorship."
mustard, Derek. I'll cut it.
There you go. I think I'm like, good. All I gotta do is I can go back in my hosting chair, let the talent be the talent, and step aside. But no,
Oh,
it's great to have you guys on. Of course, this live mentorship series we've been doing with Chris is taking you guys through the paces of what it's like to be a mentor, what it's like to be a mentee, how we can explore mentorship to take ourselves to the next level. Really, am I speaking truth here, Chris?
I think you're speaking truth, yeah. And I think part of that is just exploring this whole idea of in photography, there are these different growth stages. Derek, you and I have talked about this before, but there's the stage where you're like stuck at the starting line, you know. There's a stage where you've been going a while, maybe you plateau, or there's a stage where things are just going great and you want them to go better, right? And that photography is a craft, at least I found for me, that at these different intersections, having outside perspective helps. That we are kind of self-taught, self-made in this field, yet we need this input. So that's the jam. And,
Totally.
and last time you were in the hot seat, you were the one being coached. What was that like for you, and how do you reflect back on
Wonderful to be out of the hot seat. But no, I think,
that?
we had spoken after, and I think it's really the reflection and the time that you spend sitting with, what you talked about is just as important as being in the act, like the active mentorship and hearing everything, because it takes time for it to sink in and for you to really start to process, okay, what does this all mean? How do I put an action plan into play? And then you start to really let everything kind of take its own direction from there. So no, it feels good
Right.
to have number one gotten it out of the way and be over that hump. That
Yeah,
initial
yeah,
hump I think is
yeah.
tough. It's trying to open up and
Yes.
see, am I making sense? Do I have a direction? So it's all those
Right, right.
questions that it forces you to ask yourself. I think that was the most beneficial part for me, was asking
Mhm.
myself questions and having somebody ask questions that I didn't know needed to be asked.
Mm, mm. And maybe too, to add to that, it seems like a lot of times for me when I'm in that hot seat, stuff that comes up is kind of obvious or simple. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel, but the value is just the pause. You take the pause to ask the question, to respond, and then of course, like you're saying, reflect and build on it. And the trick with coaching, we've talked about this, and Jessica, we'll weave you in the conversation here in just a second, but is that as I've worked with a lot of people over the years, there are people who we can have a great session, but then they don't do anything about it, and it's kind of lost, right? So it's almost, I guess it's like anything. Like maybe you go to get a golf lesson. If you like have a good lesson, but then you don't put it into practice what you learned, then you're kind of like, well, that was just entertainment, not really informative, instructive, helpful. So anyhow, and Jessica and I have had a chance to work together in the past, and I thought it'd be so fun to bring on, and we've also become really good friends through a whole series of fun things. And that happens a lot, I think, in photography community, right? Is like we meet people, connect with people, and then we establish this friendship. That's one of the things I love a lot about photography. And I'm saying all that too to kind of get to this idea that coaching, from my point of view, isn't combative, it's collaborative. What I mean by that, some people come to me and say, Chris, I want you to be brutally honest. I want you to just like give it to me. And I'm like, I don't do that. But what I can do is be collaborative. I can explore how we can co-create space and co-create ideas and progress. And in coaching someone else, I'm going to learn and you're going to learn, and we can ask each other the same questions and all that. So with all that in mind, let's shift to Jessica. And then Derek, we'll bring you back on to help add some shape to all of this. But what I thought would be fun, Jessica, to start with, and I mentioned this to you a little bit before, but was this idea to help us get to know you. And one of the ways I think would be fun to get to know you, for the listener, is to tell us something that's essential about yourself and to do so by way of something in your life. So an object, it could be an instrument, it could be something related to your phone, it could be a car, it could, just something tangible. And then I'll go first, so you get a second to think. But I'm going to use my phone. So if someone said, "What's one thing essentially you have to know about me?" I would say, "Well, first, my little screen is my family. I'm a family man through and through. Like that's most important to me." And then maybe, I mean, if we were hanging out, I would say, and then next, my other screen is basically empty, no apps and a little camera. And part of that is I have ADHD. I'm highly distractible. I'm very passionate about things, and I find simplifying my life really helps. And so I might start with those two things, family, simplicity. So that's kind of my rough take on that question.
Awesome, Chris. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me yours.
Um, I think I would have to say my old car is
Okay.
very representative of me, and I think you know why, but I will explain. So I've got this 1982 300D Mercedes diesel. Um, it's got some rust, it's a little dinged up, it's loud. And it is so elegant and it is so pretty. And I'm not trying to say I'm pretty. I'm just saying it's a lovely, like solid, robust car that just keeps going no
Mm,
matter what is thrown at it. And I think you'll remember the story I told you or the pictures I sent where the dashboard was cracked.
yeah.
And rather than replacing the dashboard cover, I went in with like silicone glue and navy blue glitter and filled the cracks in like kintsugi.
Yes.
So every time I get in the car, there's these damaged parts that have like filled in with something really strange, but
Yes.
cool. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I am as a person. I think. Not
Yes.
going into I'm also a psychologist, so if I go into too much depth around this stuff, forgive
Yes.
me. I'm sorry. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would say.
No, I love that. And part of this, and thanks for kind of playing along with this. And part
Yeah.
of the context too is, it's like talking about coaching and kind of doing some live coaching is to help people think about how they would answer these questions themselves. So as we're
Mhm.
answering them, then they can kind of come up with them. And then also trying to find different ways to access our inner landscape of who we are as artists. Because the trick is, and I think we've talked about this before, but I'll ask my students, back when I would teach a whole classroom of students, like, what's your photographic style?
Mm.
And the most common answer, or I would say, well, why do you do photography? And the most common answer is, well, I want to show the world through my eyes and I want to tell stories. And to me, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like if I have to hear that again, just gonna fall over. And not that it's bad, I get it, but I'm like, well, what is the world through your eyes? Is it about like, is it melancholy? Is it elation? Is it surprise? Is it excitement? What kind of stories do you want to tell? Do you want to tell epic sagas? Do you want to tell little shorts or whatever, right? So
Mhm.
what we have to start doing is finding new ways to kind of think about who are we,
Mhm.
and then how does that affect the work that we create? So kind of flipping to that, we got a little bit of who are you by this fun car visual, which I love. And I and again, what I would hear as a coach or mentor would be like the cracks part is like rather than like ripping out the dashboard and putting a new one in, it's like, well, let me take what's there, let me embrace flaw and make that interesting.
And I think
Or
in addition to that, let me have something unconventional as a solution come to
mm,
mind and be open to it, right?
yes,
Which that's creativity,
yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And had maybe someone else I'm coaching, let's say they use the car example and they say, well, I think something that represents me is a 2024 Honda Civic.
Mhm.
It's very economical, it's very clean, it's a hybrid. There's no dirt, dust in it. I like things to be precise, efficient, and straightforward. I'd be like, great, now we have
Mhm.
something to work with, right?
Mhm.
Or whatever. And if cars don't work for people, we can use sports or weather or food or anything really. But yeah, I think to your point that is creativity, and I'm just going to say for you,
Mhm. Mhm.
where for someone else. creativity might look like something different. But what we have to do as photographers is tap into who we are, so that we can then our work flows from that. So with that being who you are, um, tell us a little bit more about your life, because we kind of did the metaphorical abstract, but then who are you? You know,
Like now, like right as of
yeah, yeah,
today.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
and family and work, and just so we kind of have context too. I mean, I
sure,
know,
sure.
I think so people know.
Well, I'm 51 and I live in the East Bay in California near Berkeley, California native. I've lived all over the place though. And I have always, since I was little, been interested in photography and art. I've taken photos for fun and kind of mindfulness since I was 10. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I'd go for photo walks and just take pictures to kind of calm my body down. Um, and now I am a psychologist. I actually am a trauma and chronic pain psychologist and a medical psychologist. So I deal with like PTSD and trauma all day long. And use photography as a way of, again, being mindful, calming my body down, seeing, looking, um, being in the moment, and helping my nervous system get into a calm place. And I'm also a wife and a mother of a wonderful teen daughter, and too many hobbies to count. And so I've got busy days.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to pick up on the thread of trauma,
Yes.
maybe, and pain. And you talked about being 10 and I don't know if you use the word mindfulness, but
Hmm.
or calming. Let's just go maybe simplify it like calming.
Hmm.
In what way is photography calming for you? And then also, as we're co-creating this, feel free to ask. You can ask me questions too, right? Because the
Sure.
way, we work in all these things is, I think the best coaching and mentoring, it's not like um, someone's high and mighty and someone's low. It's like this shoulder to shoulder thing. And
Hmm.
you don't have to ask me questions either, but I just throw that out there.
Well, I should also say, as Derek was doing the introduction, I was reflecting on, as a psychologist, I have been in a role to have multiple mentors. I've
Right.
been in a role to mentor people. And
Yeah.
the point about being in different places developmentally is so essential. And as both a client and a coach, kind of getting familiar with the stage that you're in and what you need from that stage. And I will say that, like, I agree with you on the beat me up mentality. It's just not helpful. It's not helpful for me. And I think coming at these things from a place of respect and compassion and learning is really important for people to be able to take in the information. Um,
Can I jump in there too, real quick?
please. Yes.
And I think part of that, it's a way to train ourselves to extend that to ourselves.
Exactly.
What I mean, if
Yes.
someone else beats us up, then when I'm out shooting and it goes wrong, because it always does, I'm not like, I'm such an
That's right.
idiot, or
Yeah.
or like, or I did this shoot. This is kind of embarrassing, but it was last week. I was in a hurry, threw my stuff in my camera bag, and I've talked about this on the BH thing. My go-to lens is 24 to 70 and then an 85. And so I throw the stuff in the bag, and then I get to the location where the shoot is, and instead of the 24 to 70, I have the 16 to 35 and the 85.
Oh
And
dear.
I like hold the camera up, and I'm like, this is so weird. This is like so much wider than I thought, I'm like, but I
Oh my
had this
gosh.
very distinct moment where I'm like, okay, do I beat myself up about
Yeah.
this? Or do I just like totally flip and just be like I like how you use the word compassion, just have compassion, like I made a rookie mistake,
Yeah.
but 16 to 35 opens up a whole new way of engaging, and it ended up working great, and I went with it, but it wouldn't have if I had been hard on myself.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
It reminds me of, it actually is making me reflect back on when we first started talking and I first did the workshop with you, the Authentic
Yeah.
Portraits workshop, one of two times that I did it because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And then our coaching and our mentoring, what I was after in the beginning was this, like, anointment from the amazing Chris Orwig photographer. You are good enough to be a photographer.
Right,
You
right,
you
right.
pass. And I was looking for this like,
Hmm.
do I can I even do this? I don't know if you remember those early
Yeah,
conversations,
yeah,
but like, is there even a point for me to try? Am I even worthy? Right. And that was about how I was talking to myself and thinking about myself at the time.
yeah,
And you as a mentor just were so encouraging in that place. And it's amazing how much we just wrestle with our own kind of ego and what we bring to the mentoring in photography and in anything. But over time, I think because of our conversations and our friendship and working together, I've gotten much more like, well, this is just a journey, and I'm just where I am on my journey. And if I make mistakes, it's fine. I'll learn. It's okay. I can
right.
take all those things seriously without taking them personally, right?
Yes, seriously, but not personally. And
Yeah,
then, and even maybe to add to it, because I'm thinking there's maybe like 4 or 5 people I'm coaching right now who are really good, but their biggest challenge is accepting that they're good.
exactly. I still am not there. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And, and I would say this is an interesting thing in photography, right?
Mhm.
Because the better we get, the more we realize how much further we have to go,
That's
you
right.
know? And
That's right.
and so it doesn't ever end. You just get more aware of um you get more aware of what makes a really great, lasting, timeless image that might even outlast our own life, right?
Mhm.
And you realize, ooh, I haven't gotten that yet. Or
Mhm.
anyway, but back to these people, I think in the process and kind of what I was hearing you say too is there is part of mentoring, coaching, all this kind of stuff of gaining skill, perspective, all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. But then there is, I'm going to just use the language of self-awareness and self-acceptance. Like I'm here right now. Like I'm going to go back to me. I have a 16 to 35 millimeter lens. This is just what I have to deal with. And in that case, I was expecting sunshine. I was at the beach and I love this, you know how I love this, all the kind of sunshine,
Yeah.
backlit light. And like 10 minutes before the shoot, this huge fog bank just like, whoa. And the light went from bright to just like boo, you know, very quiet and it's quiet and a little bit somber. And anyway, but I'm getting distracted on that. But just being like, okay, well, this is what I have to work with.
That's right. That's
This is
right.
who I am right now, and this gear I have is good enough.
Mhm.
And I'm good enough. I think there's a kind of a funny I statement in there.
Mhm.
Um, and 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 let's see what happens, right?
Like, how do I optimize this moment between the gear that I have, the person that I am, and the conditions that we're in, right?
Yes.
How do I optimize that? And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
And how
Absolutely.
do you optimize it in your own practice if you have a story that comes to mind with capturing an image, or we can look at some of those, or that one of your daughter, or um, talk to
You
me
know,
about.
it's hit or miss. I'll be honest with you, because I was telling you the other day, I was doing some double exposure practice using film, and I had on a Nikon FM2, is this camera that I absolutely love, and I was composing these portraits of my daughter, and then I had like a bouquet of flowers to do as the secondary overlay image. And I think I got through like 16. I was feeling really excited. And then I looked at the back of the camera. I had gone and gotten this bouquet that was these beautiful colors, just very like particular. And I looked at the back of the camera, and the insert of from the label that I had was black and white film,
Hmm.
and I felt my blood pressure go
Yeah.
up, and I felt like I was like, ah, so upset about it. And then I just sort of like kind of called it quits and started shooting other things. But I had lost my chill. Like I was not in a Zen mindful state anymore because of this mistake, right? I went back and did it yesterday to finish out the role, or Saturday, and was just taking pictures of my husband and still nice portraits. So it's like, oh, I'll make these look good in black and white. And when I finished out the roll and I took it out, it was color. The roll was color the whole time. I had just put the wrong label in the back.
Yeah.
And I got that spun out in my body, that spun out
Yeah.
about that mistake.
Mm,
And sort of like, oh, what a rookie mistake, and oh, so dumb, and
mm,
and so it just was yet again another illustration for me that like I do this to be, and we'll talk more about this, but I am after serenity. I'm after
mm,
calm in my body. I'm after
mm,
present moment awareness. I am after seeing something beautiful and trying to depict it
mm,
that will bring other people looking at the image a sense of serenity as well.
mm,
And I let that little perceived mistake throw
mm.
me completely off track, you know?
Yeah.
So that was, and I don't know how the pictures turned out because the film's still being developed, so I'll let you know.
Yeah. I'm going to pick up on a couple of things. And I think for those listening too, hopefully we're reflecting on ourselves and all this kind of stuff, but, and learning from you, Jessica, but I love how you bring up, the sense of like how things feel in your body
Mhm,
and calming. And we talk, I think in today's era, like the idea of like somatic experiencing and just a body awareness, or like where does something feel a certain way, or tuning into that is a whole new way of tuning into what's going on inside of us,
mhm,
physically, emotionally, all this kind of stuff. I think what tends to happen in photography, at least for me, is I hold the camera up, there's a sense of stillness and quiet, and then I'm really like caught up in a moment. And I see this a lot in like photo workshops. Someone's so caught up in a moment, they bump into someone or they
yeah,
drop something, or something happens, because we almost lose body awareness. And that's
yeah,
that's beautiful, right? But
mhm.
so I'm just curious about that side of it. There's the losing sense of self, but then there's also connecting to self. Does that make sense? And how does that work
Totally,
for you?
totally. Yeah, and I've noticed a sort of flow and development of this when I was um earlier stages, just learning all the technical pieces. I was out of my body. I sort of couldn't, because I was focusing so hard on the intellectual,
Okay. You're
what's
in
the
your mind
aperture,
almost.
what's the
Yeah.
ISO, what's the
Right, right, right.
all of it. And I remember you even asking me in a workshop one time, like, what focal length did you use for this portrait? It
Yeah.
was like 35 and her face was like,
Yeah.
just that I will kind of get up in my head about how to do it right. Right.
Mm,
But over time and with practice, as I've gotten kind of more muscle memory with the camera, I'm able to envision what I want and then dial everything in the right way and then be in more of a flow state with it. And the first time I actually noticed that was when I was using a tripod. And I noticed that there was something about the tripod that let me step back and sort of observe without being spinny, spinny in my head,
mm,
and take some deep breaths and even notice what was just going on, so that I was able to make smooth choices about
mm,
things. And
mm,
once I got some practice with that, I feel more able now to do it with the camera in my hands.
mm,
Um, so what I'm after when I'm shooting now is that felt sense in my body, because and there's another thing that happens when I'm in that state, which is when I'm taking a photo and everything kind of like lines up, I'll get this little like ooh in my head. Like I don't know if you
mm.
have that or not, but there's
Yeah.
this like, oh, that's it. Right? And you
Yes.
get this like almost zap of
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it. Awareness, intuition, something. But you
Yeah.
have to kind of be in the state to receive that,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's been fun to experience over the last, like, I don't know, maybe year or so. I've been having those little
Mm,
moments. This is
mm.
going to sound very weird to people that are from California.
No, 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 no. No, it makes sense. I love it. And I love you mentioning flow state,
Yeah.
and one of the things that's coming in for me is this idea of like, I think in flow state we lose sense of time. You were just like, and then there's certain things that almost like surface, like, I mean,
Yes.
athletes talk about this, and that's that we were talking about
Yes.
that zap moment where you're just like, oh my gosh, that's you know
That's right. That's right.
and then just to counterbalance that, there are times where I think photography, I'm completely out of flow state, and it is just a fight. It is a
It's a slog.
slog. It
Yeah.
is a battle. It is
Yeah.
you know,
It's just
but what,
crunchy and yucky. Yeah.
yeah, it just, yeah, it's yucky is a great way to put it. Just nothing is working, you know, or, you know, and maybe just to illustrate that, it's like, I have certain things I do for posing, and let's say I do something like I have someone like, you know, what if you lean against your hand and they just like lean against their hand, and I'm just like, what are you doing? You know, like
Yeah.
what I thought the thing I've used 100 times, a technique, like suddenly is like not working, and I don't know what to do. But so,
But Chris,
maybe
that's
why,
actually one of the things that helped me want to have you as a mentor was the knowledge that somebody who makes photos who end up looking like your photos, which I just think are so gorgeous, can have bad days and off days and chunky,
yeah,
yucky shoots
yeah,
and
yeah,
not very good photos sometimes. And they evolve into the good photo. Like you have to persist, right? And there's
yeah,
that chapter in your Authentic Portraits book about, I don't remember, This to That, I think it was called, that chapter, or That to
yes,
This, or
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. This to that, this to
This
that,
to
yeah,
That. And it 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 shows the flow of like okay to great. And
yeah,
it gave me permission as a student of yours to be okay and to
yeah,
have off days and to have days where I give up in frustration, right?
yeah,
Knowing that that's not who I am as a photographer. That's simply an off day.
yeah.
And a great person, professional photographer has those as well, right? That's like being human.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I appreciate all your compliments. I'll pay you later for saying all these nice things about me. But no, but in that part, I mean, I think this, you know, this re will resonate with you. Like when I was thinking about like that particular thing and writing that, the this to that, you know, you could write like I could have called it zero to hero. I could have called it like you know, bad to good or something. But this to that for me is similar to my shoot last week where I'm like this. I have the 16 to 35.
Right.
How do I go from whatever this is? I don't know what it is, or like how do I go from
Yeah.
this to you know to something I don't quite have the idea in mind, but so the this is just like an awareness of this is where we are, you know. I'm
Yeah.
or like on that shoot I had sprained my ankle so I couldn't walk very much,
Oh my
and I
gosh.
was like this is just what it is, you know. Or you know, a model or subject shows up unhappy, or the fog comes in, or whatever, or my settings are off, or something. But I think for photographers, I think one of the tricks, and you know, that we've kind of, I think, been able to connect on is just like, well, let's just start here,
Yeah.
and we're gonna move to there, and we don't know what there is. Like it's
Right.
not like you said, like sometimes it's just a little half step, or it's not. I'm trying to find the right thing. It's not like I'm gonna go back to your zap moment. It's
Yeah.
not like you're like, oh, bad moment. Wow, amazing moment.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, no, and I'm gonna go to your car, maybe cracks in the dashboard. Yeah, I'll fill them in. And
Right.
it's not necessarily I have a brand new dashboard. It's like let's work with what we have and let's make that better. And that's like the most challenging thing. And I think what most people, then the people I mentor and coach a lot, they take those small steps and they're like, well, that step wasn't big enough. And I'm like,
Oh,
that's amazing. Like you did such a great job. They're like, yeah, but it wasn't, you know, I could have bought a whole new dashboard and I could have then polished it. And I could, you know, I'm like,
right.
no, like that is it. Photography is incremental, right? It's not this like, I don't know.
It's like
It's
incremental and cumulative, right? Like, so
yes.
we have part of what has been so valuable in working with you has been this understanding that I almost need to have faith. If I can marry solid technique and knowledge
Yeah.
with um patience and faith that it's going to unfold the right way and just keep chipping away and chipping away,
Yes. Yeah.
it's going to work. It's going
Yeah.
to unfold over time.
And what I hear in that, there's a trust in that.
That's
Like
right.
there's
You have to trust that
you have
process.
to trust. And you have to trust your even like you have to feel trust in your body.
Yeah.
You have to trust the moment. You have to trust that even, you know, there's almost that. And
You have to
I,
trust the
I
coach too, and you have to trust that what the
yeah.
coach is saying to you about your own work is authentic. because
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time early on doing exactly to myself what you're saying your current people do, which is be like, oh, he's just saying that. Why would he say that? That's not that good. I
Right.
could do that better. Why would Chris?
Right.
No, come on. That's,
Right. Right.
but
Yes.
you were giving me your honest, authentic feedback. And there's
Yes.
something in me that wasn't trusting it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting, aspect. I think we all have that little bit of that self-doubt. And and it's funny because what we all want is we want someone to say like our work is good, right?
Mhm.
Like, what do you think of this? That's great, but then but then we're like, oh, they're just saying that.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right. Every time.
Yeah, yeah. And what I find is too, it's like cultivating, and maybe this will weave to images. And Derek, I might ask you a question too in a second, but it's like cultivating a context for the work that we're creating. So, for example, I'm just going to say you talked about calm and you talked about serenity,
Yeah.
and these are qualities. And then I like let's say images that one, your experience of capturing them um, matches what you want it to be. For example, I'm just going to make this up. I know you wouldn't like to do a wedding that
No,
had 5,000 people at it and it
no.
was 10 hours long. Your physicality of that experience would just be like horrible.
Oh my
So
God.
you don't want to have like maybe this little moment with your daughter, or you're walking on the street and there's windows and it looks beautiful and you see something. So there's that. And then you also would want the image, when you look at the image, to provide this sense of serenity.
That's right.
So that those things then allow us, together to talk about like, is this any good? Right?
Hmm.
We're like, let's just say you showed me some picture of a wedding with all these thousands of guests, and you say, is this good? I would be like, oh, I can't answer that, right? Because I don't, I would need to know what is good for you, or those listening. What we have to do for ourselves is decide what leads to something being good, all the different factors. Because photographs, even though we want them to just stand by themselves and be like good or bad, I'm just gonna go cars because we talked about cars. It's so funny. It's like I'm just gonna go to like Honda Civic, Tesla, Ford Bronco. I don't know what Ferrari, whatever. It's like, are any of those cars good?
Mm.
Well, it depends. Like a Ferrari would not be good for me. I have kids and dogs and surfboards and bikes and camping gear. That would be like the worst car in the world, even though it's an expensive, big, fancy car, right? So anyway, so alignment is what I'm getting at. How does that resonate?
Exactly.
What's coming in for you with all that?
That's just exactly right. And alignment in the coach understanding the client's style, right?
Yeah.
So like when I'll go back to the workshop when I think it was the first workshop, and I have an image in here. I don't know if you're going to show it or not,
Yeah, yeah.
where
We'll
you
pull
were
them up.
calling on different people in the workshop to say to go up and take a picture and do a shoot of something, or to say
Yeah,
something. How would you pose this person, right?
yeah.
And I was overwhelmed because I get overwhelmed. And I think you got to me like, Jessica, would you please pose so and so? And I said, no. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
walked away and I
yeah,
like went and shot something else because I was really tense in my body.
yeah,
And we had a follow-up conversation where I just said, I can't believe I said no to you. And you're like, no, it was fine. It was not a problem at all. But it's
yeah.
because we were in alignment and you understood
Yes.
that I couldn't show up that way in that moment because that's not who I am. And I
Yeah,
have to show up in sort of quiet ways and in subtle ways and in with one subject, not 500 at a wedding, and in a quiet
yeah,
setting, not on a street, not on a busy street, right? And so there's something about the coach getting to know the client and what the client is drawn toward, helping the client find his or her own alignment that will then
yeah.
translate into the images and the style.
Right. And when there's alignment, the images are full of all of that, and they,
Yes.
they can reach people. I think
Yes.
that's the thing. So this isn't
Yeah.
just about like be alignment because it sounds like this nice idea, but and I appreciate all the nice things you say about my work, but just to use myself as an example and to be vulnerable in that, I think is like they're like who I am. Like all the images I share,
Yeah.
it's like a direct reflection of the inner working of my life. And what I've learned from that, and and maybe this is coming up because you are a psychologist and you have all these deep thoughts about that, is I've realized recently that I'm really good at connecting with people in a short amount of time. Like it's one of my superpowers.
Yeah.
And I can do this in photo shoots and create these soulful images, but I've started to realize that there's a bit of loneliness in that because it's like I connect quickly with people and then it's gone. Then I connect quickly and then it's gone. And I connect and imagine I've done that thousands of times now. And it's not that that's bad, but it was almost like that was maybe what I need is to connect with people. But it's also made me aware of I want to connect with people on deeper, longer term ways as well, and not just get that quick connection. Does that make sense at all?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then because I'm at this, I talked about plateaus so I'm at this, let's call it a plateau where I'm like, I'm just going to call it quick connection versus long connection.
Yeah.
I know my next growth edge in photography is long connection versus quick connection. And so I need a mentor. I'm going to make you my mentor for a moment. I need a mentor to help me navigate that because it's nothing I've done is bad and I don't want to abandon it, but I also want to grow. So what comes up for you for me?
Oh my God.
I know.
I mean, I think
Oh,
that I'll just tell you what comes up for me. You
yeah,
have a number of models that you have worked with repeatedly over years.
sure.
And and I'm thinking of one woman in particular where I think the longer you work with her, the more depth the photos are getting and the more
Yeah.
connection you have with her,
Mm.
right? And so I would think about a longitudinal approach. I would think about
Yes.
photographing over
Great.
time, over time, over
Yes.
time, so that she's not just showing up being pretty and
Hmm.
posed, but that she's showing up increasingly more real as you show up increasingly more real. And
I
that takes time,
love this. I
right?
love this. This so resonates with me. Let me just, I mean, just jumping in
Because you
really
know who
quick.
I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
also everyone. It
Yes.
relates to everyone because there's people I photograph and what happens when I photograph someone, I can imagine them as a little kid, I can imagine them old, and there's often times where I'm like, oh, it'd be so amazing to photograph this person in 30 years or in 10 years. But what you help me identify, because that's something I feel is like is this I like the word longitudinal. I like fine art projects that have this. I mean, I've done this with my kids, right? Where I
Yes.
photograph my kids
Yeah.
to now and then continuing that. But just, yes, I'm gonna, do my short connection stuff,
Yes.
but then find ways to loop back. Like even um I'm gonna go to one of my favorite poets, Young Pueblo. I photographed him 3 times now, but to make it like a goal to like photograph him over the next 20 years. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like
Exactly.
not let that just go,
Yeah.
but keep going. I photograph these surfers, as they've gotten older. I have a lot of different categorical people, and the reason why this all resonates, this is so helpful for me, is my whole thing is like there are a few books I want to write. One is called The Art of Living. I'm working on that. Another one is called The Art of Growing Old. And the art of growing up and growing old is, I think, one of the most exquisite arts forms. Like, how do we do this well? And I think that longitudinal study would help me gain wisdom on how to do that. So I'm just like, yes, high 10.
High
This
five.
was worth the price of admission. That was such great feedback.
Aw,
Thank you. So
you're welcome.
that you like nailed it. And then Derek, I don't know if you're listening at all, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts, questions, ideas for us, just as we're a little bit through, because you're always so cool and calm and insightful.
I
But
was just
yeah,
over here
what?
doing jumping jack. No, you guys are awesome. I was kind of hoping. I'm like, let them go until 2 and forget that
We'll
I'm
just
here. I'm
keep.
like, I'm enjoying this.
Okay. Okay.
Like,
Cool. Cool.
I
Cool.
didn't know Jessica was a psychologist. So I'm like, this like it couldn't have worked out any better.
Aw,
Like everything I'm listening to is really just validating everything about mentorship. I mean, it's almost like, you know, Chris, my thoughts on it. I've ranted to you ad nauseum about why I'm such a firm believer in mentorship. And it's like therapy in a Halloween costume for creatives. And I think you guys, just watching the way you guys interact, I think we dress up mentorship, and some people make it so much more complicated than it has to be. You have somebody who wants to get here. That same person respects whatever person it is, their mentor. It's somebody that they respect for XYZ reasons that they feel can help them get to this point. There's a rapport there. There's a mutual respect. There's this chemistry, this vibe, and it's really just two people communicating. It's not like, I think we've always thought of mentor over the mentee, and I really see it as two parallel planes where this person's helping this person just as much as this person's helping this person.
Yes.
And in listening to you guys talk, those are all the things that are going through, where it's like really like it's like having a sounding board, and somebody who gets you, and somebody who, Chris, you've said this so much to me, is like they have to be invested in you. That's one of the key identifiers of a great mentor, somebody who's equally invested in you the way that you're invested in yourself. And in listening to you guys, it's like this back and forth. It's like a really intelligent game of pong, for all my older viewers out there. And that's my takeaway, is that it's easy to see. I mean, I think some people need a little bit more and some people don't. When Jessica, when you were like, I'm a psychologist, and you've been in the chair too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we've both been on both sides of the field. And I think it's easier to approach things from the student perspective. If you've been the teacher, you know how to be a student, you know what the student requires, you know what the teacher requires of the student. And just kind of turning it to the audience out there, for people who haven't tried mentorship, or who are curious about it, or they don't know how to be a mentee or what to look for in a mentor. I think this conversation that you guys just had is so important. And I think it really is just like, wow, it seems like it was this great, cosmic mystery that, you have to figure out this riddle to finding a mentor. And it's like, no, it's really simple. Just ask yourself a couple questions, find somebody that you really look up to, that lives the same way, that, lives in a way that you respect, in a way that you would, want to follow in their footsteps, and that creates in a way that you aspire to create, but not become them. Chris, we've talked about this. You're not trying to
Yeah.
become someone. You're not creating a carbon copy of yourself. You're helping
Yeah.
somebody become whatever version of themselves they're aspiring to be. So, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I figured it would. I wanted to provide my third person perspective after
No,
just
this is great,
listening
man.
to you guys riff.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I like how you kind of normalized it a little bit. I think back to like the combative idea, I think we get a little intimidated, or like, oh my gosh, but really just, bring it down to earth. And I also like how you highlighted this idea of how someone lives. I've talked about this a bunch, but I feel like who we are, our life and photography, when those are aligned, better stuff happens, right? And finding ways to, at least for me in my journey, finding ways to be around people. I'll just go with Derek. Like, I love how you approach life. I love your energy. I love your insight. We capture things in totally different ways. Same thing with you, Jessica. I love, like, you've brought a lot of serenity into my thought now, this whole longitudinal thing. And I'm like, this is going to be a big milestone for me. I think 10 years from now, I'll look back on this and I'll be like, boom, that's where that happened. And that there's this almost like affinity for something. And then when I'm going to go a little dark here too, there's some people I don't have affinity for. So, so can I go there? Can I
It's
just do this
real.
for a
It's
little?
real.
Okay. There's like one photographer, great photographer, amazing stuff. And for him, loved his work. But then I kind of realized like what he was really in pursuit of was something novel and new. He wanted like big novelty in every single photograph. So it was almost like new wow, new wow, new wow, new wow. And I liked his work because I would look at it and it was like, wow, wow, wow. But then in kind of getting to know that person, I realized I actually don't like novelty. I mean, this is kind of funny. Like if you look at my work, it all kind of looks and feels the same. There's nothing
Mhm.
like, I'm not like, what, or sometimes people critique me. They're like, yeah, you just like shoot backlight with like shallow depth of field or and have someone wear a hat. And I'm like, yeah, that's like all I do, or something.
That's it. So easy.
Right. Where I'm not like, well, one time it's a red hat, one time it's a blinking hat, one time it's like a baseball hat, and then and so what was important for me in that situation was to realize like, yeah, I don't want to be mentored by this. And that's fine. Like they have a vibe and a jam. And in their life, they really were pursuit of novel. And this is a great person and good values and all that kind of stuff. But artistically, the alignment wasn't there. And so the reason I'm saying this is we're all thinking about our influences is finding those that resonate. And that makes a difference.
And can I say reaching out to people too? Like I just
Yeah.
randomly read your book and reached out to you on Instagram and said, "Hey, I loved your book. I love this chapter. Hooray." And we started
Yeah.
a conversation and like the rest
Yeah.
is history. Reach out to people who you're interested in maybe having as a mentor. Like
Yeah.
people might write back, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's such
And
a great
yeah.
point, Jessica, is that I think people, yeah, people are afraid to interact.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris, I'm sure you get a ton of people who it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you got any extra Sony gear laying around? My camera's really old. And then you get the people who's
Yeah.
like, well, how do I become an influencer? How to become a brand ambassador? And
Yeah.
then every once in a while, you get somebody who's just like, hey, I just want to let you know that your work really inspires me.
Exactly.
And just wanted
Yeah.
to say that. And I think those are the connections that they get so caught up in, we get caught up in the whirlwind of social media and 24-hour access to anybody that we want. Anybody who has an online imprint, it's like we have access to them. And I think, like you said, Jessica, it's like just that one little message that really just break the ice, and it could build like, look where you guys, I would have
Yeah.
swore that
Lifelong
you guys were
friendship.
like lifelong friends. Like, hey, we grew up
Yeah. Well, we are now.
the next town over.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and I think just to add to that, encouraging people who want to go from this to that, just use that one. Um, that reaching out in different ways is great. And then knowing too, if you don't get the feedback or the response back, that's okay too. So
It
holding
is.
it a little lightly. I've had a lot of students who maybe are super excited to reach out to someone and they're like, I've like messaged them on or sent them a DM like twice, and I don't know if I should do it again. I don't want to like bug them. And it's like, you're not going to bug anyone. It will either happen or it won't. They could have been on a family trip and didn't even see your message,
Mm-hmm.
but just let it be sort of natural. And I think that's how these mentorships evolve. And I'm trying to find the right words, and maybe you guys can help me out on this, but I'm just going to go, I have 3 daughters, teenagers. There can be a lot of drama where they're like, well, I wanted to go to coffee with this person, but then they didn't go, and then this happened, and I think it means this because they only ordered tea instead of coffee, whatever. And you're like, wow, I don't even know what you're talking about. But versus like, I don't know. I guess it would be like if I called you Derek, maybe a better example, and you didn't call me back, I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, Derek doesn't like me. I'm so worried. Maybe I said something weird on the last webinar.
Like,
It's
don't
just
read
like,
into it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
just be casual with it.
Yeah.
And that's how these friendships work. You
Yeah.
trust, and then you have the light touch, and then there's impact,
Yeah.
that
It has to
can
be organic. I mean, I
organic.
think
Maybe
we've
that's what I was
all
trying to say.
had we've all had experiences where stuff feels forced,
Yeah.
or you get the ick for whatever reason,
Yeah.
where it's just like some people, the interaction it's exactly that, and it's just like, oh, perfect example, Chris, what you said, but just, oh, this person hasn't texted me back for 6 hours. They're whatever. Okay, they're living their
Yeah.
life. It's like I
Yeah.
always say, I'm like, with my friends supporting me, it's like, I hope my friends don't have time to support me, because that means I'm surrounding myself with people who are out being successful for themselves and not just
Mm,
sitting on the couch waiting for me to do something and come like,
mm,
it's like, no, like I want you to be out doing things. And I think we all just are, most of us, I think self-awareness is a big, big, big thing that people overlook. And you really have to look in the mirror a lot in order to get to that point where you can say, Chris is doing his thing. He'll get back to me when he gets back to me when he has time. And if he doesn't get back to me, it's fine. It happens. He's living his life. He's got a family. He's got 87
yeah.
brand new dogs probably still running around the place. And, so I think not everybody is self-aware, but it's, you know, you're going to find your tribe. You're going to find the person who sees things the same way. And the person that doesn't
Yeah.
see things the same way, then okay, they might pair up with a mentor who is the same way, that freaks out when someone doesn't text them back 30 seconds later. And I
Yeah.
think
Well,
really it's just, I feel like now with everybody wants to appeal to everybody, and it's such a like toxic approach that I feel like social media is kind of ushered in droves, is you don't need to appeal to everybody. You don't need a huge reach. You don't need a huge audience. It's better to have 3 loyal people that you really see eye to eye with than 1,000 people who are going to inundate you with messages and bother you and this and that, and people that just don't see things the same way.
Derek, I think you just nailed the secret of coaching and mentoring, which is that we go into it thinking I'm going to become better as a photographer. I'm going to become more technically strong. My photos will get better. Maybe I'll get more popular, more commercially viable. Nobody expects to gain self-awareness, right? But the whole process of mentoring and coaching is about becoming self-aware via photography and having that translate into your images. I think you just
Totally.
totally hit the nail on the head.
And I think you just replaced me, Jessica. Chris, you
Okay.
got a new co-host.
Okay, wait. How about this?
I'm now
Let's
forever an audience member.
can we show a few? Let me share my screen. This is so fun. I love everything about this. Let me show a few of Jessica's photos. Does that sound good? And we'll talk about that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, because we've been talking about photography and we haven't shown images, which I'm realizing I kind of need to do. And let me just see. I think this one, you guys tell me, can you see Bridge open there with
Yep.
some photos? Okay. And as we look at these, and we'll just go through a few, Jessica, you came to this point where you suddenly like had this aha moment that serenity is what you're looking for. Talk to me about that and talk to me about this image. And then we'll just say, Derek, this is a freaking epic image, right?
Totally.
That's from my phone.
It's wonderful.
That's
Chris
from my
already
old
Chris and
janky
I can't
iPhone.
take phone pictures. So Jessica, this
Yeah.
this hits extra deep because neither of us we always struggle with the iPhone pictures.
Yeah.
So this is a shot of San Francisco from the East Bay. And I was out walking with a friend, and it was very, very calm that day on the water. And I just said, "Oh, let's pause. I just want to take a picture and try to capture this," and waited for the guy to move into, the scene. And later posted it on Instagram. And a photographer friend who I really respect came on and said something like, "If you had to describe the word serenity with one photograph, this would do it." And when he said that, I just got this flood of like, oh my God, that's what I've actually been trying to do this whole time, is to be in a state of calm, quiet, connected, peaceful serenity with the subjects and with the final image. And it just like broke open this idea that I'm trying to be serene in my body when I'm taking the photos, and I'm trying to capture serenity. So that's what was pivotal about this image for me, was the other person saying serenity. And like I got that gift from my friend for giving me that feedback,
And this is beautiful in like 1,000 levels. One is like our this to that and awareness. It comes from others. We do it, but then we need someone else to help us. And then two, I think, from one of my good friends, Brian O'Neill Hughes, we had this one story where he was talking about photographing something, and what some people might say is this is a photograph about a stand-up paddle or something, but it's like, no, it's about serenity. And so this idea that what we're photographing, regardless of the subject matter, it's not the subject matter. It's not the genre of photography. It's not like I'm a wedding photographer. This is a wedding photo, or I'm a street photographer, or because those genres are helpful. And then there's the subgenres, and then there's the content, but then there's like what it really is. And when we progress as photographers, we get to those moments. This one, do you want to tell us a little bit about this one?
Yeah, this is a photo of my daughter. And I just took this a couple weeks ago for some double exposure practice. And so I did a photo of my daughter in the living room against a backlit white background. We've got this like 2-story north-facing windows. Just the living room is just made for portraits. And
Yeah.
then I also took a photo of a Japanese maple and made it kind of high contrast and blended them in Photoshop. And I don't know. She has been photographed by me for 15.5 years. And so she
Hmm.
is used to being calm and serene and present when I photograph her, you
Yeah.
know? And she's pretty, obviously, right? And that doesn't hurt, but she will sit comfortably and serenely for me in connection with each other when I'm photographing her. And so I don't have to pose her. I don't have to say like, look calm, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
She just like drops in when I start
Hmm.
taking photos. And so this to me was more, I mean, I was trying to, do something technical for learning, but it also kind of captures her elegance, her calmness, her I don't know, she faces toward the light in her life, you know what I mean? Um
Beautiful.
so
Derek, what are your thoughts?
It is beautiful, and, I'm glad when Jessica was like, "I was trying to accomplish something technical," and I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
"It's exactly what I thought." It's technically, like, you get sucked into, like, how the shadow shapes the face, and it's like
Mm,
everything's just perfect, but then at the same time, you're kinda lost in the image in a good way. Like, you
Mm,
just
mm,
kinda just sit there. It's just an image, you just sit there, it's peaceful,
that was the goal.
mm,
and you
Yeah.
don't I think it's so hard for some people to understand the way your brain can be pulled in different directions when you look at something and something's distracting, and they don't understand why lighting and composition and all this stuff matters is because you want to be able to enjoy the image as it was intended, and you don't want to have your brain fighting you. And I'm sitting there listening to
mm.
Jessica talk and just looking at it, it's like, yeah, it's just a technically nice image. I The whole double exposure side of it, that blows my mind because I tried to do them yesterday, and people don't realize how hard
So
these things
hard,
are.
so
They're
hard.
they will never see the light of day. And I'm
Yeah.
looking at this and I'm just like, so good.
And I think,
You know
yeah,
what,
it's
Derek?
just,
One of the things that helps me with that idea of peacefulness and reducing
yeah.
complexity and noise and stuff in my photos, which is one of my goals, is the background. And I am obsessed with backgrounds and simple backgrounds and negative space. And there's something about that for me that just removes noise and clutter. Um, and so as much as seeing the subject, I see the outline of the subject and what is a calm, quiet background that is going to convey a peaceful whole, right? A peaceful
Mm,
unit between subject and background. So that was another piece. And I do that more with like still life and other stuff than I do with portraits, but um I don't know, it helps. I think it helps convey what I'm trying to when the background is very, very simple.
mm.
So sorry I interrupted you, Chris.
No, it's great. This is amazing. And I'm just gonna echo one little part, which is I think sometimes a student might show me a photo like this and say, well, this is a Photoshop thing I did. Or, this is a stand-up paddleboard, but it's like, no, it's always so much more. And to me, it's poetic. And a poet isn't like, yeah, this is a grammatical structure of, you know, something, you're like, yes, of course. You got to like, poets really know language, but it has to transcend it. And I think even like Ansel Adams back in the day, if someone said his photos were sharp, he was disappointed. The point wasn't like the technical sharpness. It was way more than that. So I love
Right.
that. And then I'm just going to go through the kind of a few more kind of clicking through them, their portrait. Oops, pressed the wrong button.
This
Another
was
one. Oh,
when
go
you had
ahead.
asked me to pose somebody and I was overwhelmed and I said no and I walked off and
Yes,
I took
yes,
a selfie of myself in a gong because I was like,
yes,
"Oh, that's a neat surface. I'll see a neat
yes,
reflection." And I was trying to get myself calm, right? And
yes.
so this photo it's not ICM, it's just a reflection in a golden colored gong when I was using the photography to get myself back in one piece because I was not feeling
Yeah.
I was feeling so scattered, right?
Yeah, we were on the beach. There's a yoga teacher with this big gong and all this stuff happening. Everyone's shooting. It's chaotic and the lights changing. But yeah, and I love, love, love how you one took a moment to to tap into self,
Hmm.
to be the creative about it. I think a lot of us, but this is the beautiful thing about photographers is like, and which is different than non-photographers. Non-photographers are like, I feel this way, and then they don't know what to do. We like get to do stuff and then create something that actually like even benefits other people. I'll jump to the next one. I love this one. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So one of the things that I like to do is early in the morning, I will walk around my neighborhood and I will look for dogs and cats looking out of their windows.
Oh,
And I just will get like a 70 to 200 on my camera and zoom in as far as I can and use the window frame as the outside frame of the photo and try. At first I was like, oh, there's reflections of trees and it's distracting, but now I realize that that is part of what makes it look kind of painterly. And I
Hmm.
like how noble the dogs look. And what I love about this is when you catch pets looking out of the window and the people aren't around, you're getting this just pure, there's no interference from the person and from the
Hmm.
dog being like, what am I supposed to do, owner? You know what I mean? It's just them existing in their own serene place of viewing their front yard and guarding their house. And so I don't know, there was something about this one to me that just looked kind of painterly and calm.
Mm, I
Um,
love it.
yeah,
I love it. And I'm going to pause sharing just because we're,
sure.
so we can go back to our faces. Oops, let's see. Oh no.
you're
Did
good.
I just kill?
No, you're
We
good.
Am
have
I back?
faces
Okay.
back.
Okay. I thought
Faces
I like
back.
killed the whole thing. Uh, um, um, I wanted to pause because this is so beautiful. It's so fun to see your work. Um, and I just want to see too if there are any questions from audience too, because sometimes stuff comes in and then come up with a way to wrap all this up. So Derek, anything coming in or anything that would be fun to weave into?
Yeah, there is a question going back to our whole topic of reaching out to
Yeah,
people. Elizabeth is asking, how do you reach out without feeling like you're imposing?
hmm. It's a great question. I'll maybe take a stab. Someone else can too, but I think part of it is, and I think I've shared maybe a story like with one of the people I mentored. I met him, I wrote him a handwritten letter, I sent him a photo, we corresponded. My thing was like, how do I connect and add value? I think some people think, how do I connect and extract value?
Hmm.
To your point on like, um, and so just kind of asking that question, like, what would be valuable? And just uplifting to that person. I think and holding it a little lightly. Um, I guess, and I'm just gonna go like, let's say Derek, last time I was in New York, I reached out and I'm like, man, I'm in New York, it would be fun to connect. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, no worries. It ended up not working, and that was fine. And I really wanted to work. I've been dying to go shooting with you and hang out and do all the fun stuff. But for whatever reason, my schedule with the stuff I had, your schedule. But my approach, hopefully that didn't feel opposing, where I was just like, hey, I'm here. This is it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, no biggie. And it was cool. Right.
Yeah, and
Anyone have anything to add to that?
I think to take it a step further is even
Yeah.
beyond the actual
Of course, you're going
approach.
to take it a step
You know,
further.
I always do. My family
Derek.
calls me a perpetual line crosser.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I think long game is the way to go. Like when in
Mm,
doubt, go long game
Hmm.
and be an observer. And maybe it's because I love, in college I studied psychology and sociology. I'm a street photographer. I love to observe. I love to sit back. I love
mm,
to play the village idiot and I'm over there taking notes in my pad
mm,
and like I just love to just see how people interact and you can gain so much information just from paying attention, especially when people don't know they're being, having attention paid to them. So all that to say, feel somebody out. We
Yeah.
put so much stuff online now that most people you can kind of get a pretty good gauge of how they are. And if you just take the long route and slow roll it, I think the actual approach, Chris, no matter what approach, you could have just hit me up and be like, "Hey, dude, I got a half an hour right now, take it or leave it." I'm gonna look at it the same way as if you wrote me a handwritten letter that was in
Right, right.
calligraphy and was like, "My
I'll
my
do that next
dearest
time.
friend, I will be heading your way." So I think it's more about like, okay, there's a mutual respect. I know that you're busy. I know you're not coming
Yeah.
out here to just like skip in the streets. You're coming out here for work. You know that I have work. You know that I have a family out here. And it's like, I know that you're on a tight time schedule. And that understanding supersedes any approach. And I think all that comes from the understanding, from the knowledge. And I think if somebody, when you message somebody, okay, I know that this person spends 24 hours a day online posting memes. The bar is probably going to be a little lower, that you could go in and you can send that person a meme and break the ice and send, build rapport. It's really just about understanding the case and understanding the person rather than putting so much onus on what is the approach.
Hmm.
I agree. I think there's something that's also worked for me, which is I study and notice what does the photography touch or open up or spark in me, and I try to communicate that to the person, right? So I try to say, not just your photos are so pretty, can you teach me how to do that? But I try to say like, oh man, the way that you capture the connection and sort of like the light within somebody just really touches my heart, and I appreciate that, that kind of thing. If you can try to, Derek, I think it's a version of what you're saying, which is if you can study and observe what the photographer is after and try to communicate that has hit home with you, they're going to see you more as a kindred spirit and see it more as a worthwhile investment of mentoring time, if they think you get it, right?
Investment. I love that word there. It's like I don't just see your work, and it's almost like what you were just kind of alluding to, Jessica, is like I'm going to do the work. I don't want you to
Yes.
just hand me anything.
Yes.
This is what I see. I'm
Yeah.
willing to do the work. Chris and I talk about this all the time,
Yes.
nobody wants to be given anything.
Right.
You want to work with people who are invested, like you said, in doing the work themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chris will tell, I mean, when in our mentoring, Chris would give me an assignment and I'd go out and do the assignment times 40, like
Yeah.
I would do that assignment big. And it was because I knew it was a thoughtfully given assignment, and I was investing in my own skill and knowledge, and I was honoring the coaching relationship by doing that work, and my own path also. I was honoring my path.
Yeah. And then the results were like so fast. Like I feel like you just like turned this corner so crazy fast, which I think I think some people from a distance are like, oh, you just like got good. But it's like, no, we did all these things we're talking about, put in all the effort, all the thoughtfulness, and then of course something comes from that.
Right, that's right.
Which is the cool part. And
I
I
like that
mean,
idea though, that you're both talking about, that there needs to be conveyed from the potential client interest, investment, energy, and a spark, persistence. Like, I'm going to take what you might teach me and just run with it, because that's what's exciting to a teacher, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's what's
yeah,
exciting for a mentor and a coach.
Oh, that's a great point too. You're not mentoring for the paycheck. It's not like a
right.
wedding photographer who's like, "Ah, you know what? I love photography. Oh, whatever. $15,000 for a wedding? Hell yeah."
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
mentoring it's a labor of love. It's a
It's your
passion.
heart.
It really
yeah,
is.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's a
Yeah, and
great
it's and
point.
it's and it's friendship, I think too,
Hmm.
where it's like what you would, I don't know. I'm just looking out at my lawn that needs to be mowed right now. It'd be like if if Derek, if you came over and were like, dude, I'll knock out your lawn. You sprained your ankle, I got this. It's just like what do good friends do? You kind of like do stuff for each other, and there's
Yeah.
no like you're not keeping tabs of like, well, he mowed my lawn, I have to mow his, or you just There's this like organic, natural, cool flow. And then the best things are when, like, let's say with Jessica, she does this craziest assignment ever, analyzing all these kind of things. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, she did that. Well, then I gotta like step up, you step up, and then like you're kind of like life's like amazing, right? You know what I mean? And then now I'm here reaping the reward of now I have this longitudinal 10-year thing going on where like I thought this was about Jessica. It's all about me. But that's what happens in
Surprise.
friendship, right?
No,
It's
it's a
a
totally
it's a
it's a
big
reciprocal relationship.
reciprocal.
And
Yeah.
the
It,
mutuality, right? It has
totally.
grown over time to be mutual. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, when you go, even if you go down to the store and you have a clerk who's working a part-time job and they go out of their way to be just really genuinely pleasant, like you could tell there's nothing in it
Yeah.
for them. They just, you know
Yeah.
what, I'm gonna make the best of my day, or I really love what I do. Or you walk out of there and you're like, wow. You know how many times it's like, say,
Yes.
wow, there's good people still out there, like just genuinely like
That's right.
good people. And what does that
Yes.
do? You carry that energy, the same way that you bring your baggage around, you can bring great energy around with you. And then what does that make
Yeah.
you more likely to do? You're going to transfer that on to the next person. And that's really just going to kind of infect, your body and your soul and everything that you put forth out into the universe.
And that goes back to me for coaching being about self-awareness, both for that's the gift of it, both for the coach and for the student,
Yeah. And from Fred, go in with hope, but without expectation. I like that.
Yeah. Nailed it. We should just had him say that. We took so long to say it.
Fred, don't wait next time. Just jump
I
in.
know, just like cut us off. We don't have to talk
Come on,
about
Fred.
I have to talk about like mowing lawns or things that. Well, I feel like we're at a great juncture. I mean, I could hang out with both of you all day long and would love that.
But you got to mow
But
the
I feel
lawn.
like we're at a pretty good spot. And what an honor. And Derek, thanks for setting this up. And Jessica, thanks for taking the risk to do this in
Oh, my
this way.
pleasure. My pleasure.
This is so wonderful. And
Yes, I second that. We can't thank you enough for coming. I mean, it was great also just to see, we kind of had a teaser of your process and your work, but to get to meet you and hear how it's affected you and see the work.
Thank you.
I'm not
Thank
going to
you.
drag this out, but your work is beautiful. I haven't seen the before, and I don't even think I need to. The work, the after
Don't.
is so it's great. It's perfectly. It has nice restraint in the processing. The images resonate, and there's certain images you just look at and you're like, it feels good looking at this.
Thank you.
I want art to be art and be effortless. So
Thank you.
huge thank you for
what a
being
nice thing to
vulnerable in
say.
here.
yeah.
Appreciate
And
that.
and a huge, I think you're a huge testament too to having this really amazing career that you have and pursuing the art and craft of photography. And I hope that encourages people too. There's so many ways to do this thing, photography, and it can be such a joyful, expansive thing. It's not narrow, it's wide, big. So it's inspiring.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Chris. You're my already BFF, and Derek, you're my new BFF. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
All
This is
right.
what we do here. We make friends.
Yes, yeah.
I love it. This is great energy. It's like, man, I gotta host another stream. It's like I'm ready, just like out fishing. You guys make me want to grab my camera and go out and create.
Right on.
So off
Yeah.
the
And the next
about.
time we're all in New York, Derek, you'll take us around and teach us how to do serenity-filled
Serenity in New
street-
York.
Serenity in New York.
yeah,
That
you
sounds
guys are gonna have to.
impossible.
You guys,
But maybe
we got Serenity, two out of 3 serene ones here, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
be the wild card.
Thank you, guys.
We need that. Well, huge thank you to you guys. Of course, Sony for hosting this wonderful
Yes.
series. As always, super supportive of what we do here on the event space. But we can't do it without people like you guys. And I'm gonna kind of, without dragging this out, just really, I do want to address something that you just hit on, Chris. And it's like you could have a career. You don't have to be a full-time photographer. I think one of the most beautiful, underrated things now is that you can be every bit an artist and photographer while having a 9 to 5 doing anything under the sun. And you can lift a camera once a week, once every 6 months, once every 2 years, and like just stop the nonsense and putting labels on things and let's just create. So huge thank you to you guys. This is super inspiring. How are we going to top this, Chris? I'll leave that up to you for next time.
Yeah. We will. There's one coming that's going to be good.
There we go. Well, huge thank you,
Okay.
of course, to Chris and Jessica for joining us, Sony as well, and all of our viewers out there. We can't do it without you guys. Thanks for getting your questions in and engaging with us. Fred, behind the scenes, thank you as well for always being there to pick me up when I need some picking up. But that is all we have for now. Another edition of the B&H Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.